when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, silence covered the sky. And when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, silence covered the sky.
That the Bible, 1962. Now, 1962 there, compare that with page 616 of selected speeches of His Imperial Majesty, and it says on that particular speech, July 23rd, 1961, because it was originally 1961 when the work was completed. If you read and study the speech will basically explain it in itself, but actually that's a translation of the original Mekdem that was in this book. So this is His Imperial Majesty's Bible. This is what we have been proclaiming to our brothers and sisters and to the world in His Imperial Majesty's true name and in His new name, that this particular book here is what Revelation 5:5 speaks of. When it speaks of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, when it speaks about He who sits on the throne, and there was a book that was written within and had on the back side of the book, this is the back side of the book, had on the back side of the book those 7 seals. As you can see right there, those 7 seals. When you study the word seal, it's very interesting, because when you study the word seal in the etymology of Ethiopic, you will find that the word seal in the etymology also means to stamp, to print. So the word seal means as well to stamp something and to print it. So the interpretation, or the true interpretation of Revelation, especially 5:5, has to be understood from Ethiopically. In other words, Ethiopically, in other words, seeing it through an Ethiopian spectacle, therefore understanding the translation, what the words actually mean, because English does not really convey that. When you see 7 seals, the first thing you think of in seals is something to close something up, but it says He loosed the 7 seals. He didn't seal it up to close it. It was already sealed. What does it mean by seal? It was in another language or another version of that language, the Ethiopic, the Ge'ez, and it was unsealed. It was unsealed, taken out of the Ethiopic, and therefore sealed within the Amharic, or like what we know to be the Royal Amharic. It was sealed or unsealed into the Royal Amharic, or the Lisana Negusha Nagesh, the language or the tongue of the King of Kings. So that's one thing we would like to make clear to the brothers and sisters. And now here's the main point in response, or adding on to the truth of what our brother from Island Mystic Films sought to communicate about the Our Father prayer. When we turn His Imperial Majesty's Bible to chapter Matthew, the book of Matthew in the New Testament, Matthäus Wengel, and when we go to chapter 6, or Mi'eraf Sidis, Kutir, from verse Zetang, which is verse 9, it says this. This is the Our Father prayer. It says, Ingadi inantes indi ጸልዩ በሰማያት የምትኖር አባታችን ሆይ ስምህ ይቀደስ መንግሥትህ ትምጣ ፈቃድህ በሰማይ እንደሆነች እንዲሁ በምድር ትሁን የዕለት እንጀራችንን ዛሬ ስጠን እኛም ደግሞ የበደሉንን ይቅር እንደምንል በደላችንን ይቅር በለን ከክፉም አድነን እንጂ ወደ ፈተና አታግባን መንግሥት yante natina H.I.M kuburim lezele alamu. Amen. Now, our brother was referring to a version of this particular prayer that we did have some hand in translating and transliterating more and distributing to our Rastafari brothers and sisters. Now, the point that he had made to say was in verse, this doesn't have verses here, but was in one of the verses regarding to Kakufu. He says Kakufu Hulu. And we'd like to point out that this prayer, which has been released by originally by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and it's the same prayer that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church gives to its new members and teaches to its members and users, does not agree with the Metzhaf Kedus. However, the particular point that our brother did make mention of, Kakufu, he made a good point too with the pronunciation, because the pronunciation that he used was not actually accurate. However, it was close, and it was pointing out that we do need to learn the Ge'ez, the Ethiopic, as well as the Amarinya. It says Kakufu Adnan Inji. That agrees with His Imperial Majesty's Metaf Kedus. However, the point that we want to make is where in this prayer, the areas in this prayer which do not agree with this particular Book of the Seven Seals of His Imperial Majesty. That's what we'd like to touch on, and we'd like to get into some of the details, because very important. These two prayers are different. For example, let's touch on the first part of this. Let's return to Yemateos Wengel Mi'eraf chapter 6. And let's begin from the beginning. In the beginning of this prayer, many of you may be familiar with this in the English, because the scripture reminds us where it says to us, it says, to sanctify in our hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you, with meekness and with fear, or with reverence. In other words, as a true teferi, as a true ras teferi. So we like to give this answer to our brethren, and our brethren them and sistren as well, in meekness and in reverence, that the fault or the error, what we would say the supposed error, is not in that particular verse, even although if you turn to Luke, in the book of Luke, this same prayer, the Abatachin prayer, is repeated in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 12, and it's actually chapter 11. Luke chapter 11 and 2. Let's go to Luke chapter 11 and 2. Luke 11 and 2, because the two prayers are similar. However, 11 and 2. Here it reads from verse 2, says, Bamarinya. It says, Alat Chowim, and he said to them, Alat Chowim, Sitas Eliyu, Indi Bellu. Like this, all of y'all say, Indi Bellu. Besamayat Yemitanor, Abatachin Hoy, Abatachin Hoy, Simih Yikedes, Menagishte, Timta, Fekade, Besamayindahone, Chindihu, Bemidar Tihun, Ye illet injerachnin, illet sitan, Khatiyata Chinem Yikar Belin, Inyam Degmo, Ye Bedelunin, Hulu Yikar Belenalina, Ka Kufu Adnin Inji, Wode Fetana Atagaban. And then at verse 4 it ends. And if you compare the two prayers,